All right, good morning, everyone. As Denise said, my name is Taylor, and I am from Anchor House. I'm the school outreach counselor there, and I'm just here today to tell you a little bit about our agency, exactly what we have to offer for youth and the community, and I'm just going to go through a little bit about each of our programs because we're not just the homeless shelter, which seems to be everyone's most recognized feature of our agency. So Anchor House is a multi-service agency for runaway, homeless, at-risk youth, and their families. Our mission statement is to provide a safe haven where homeless, runaway, and at-risk youth and their families are empowered to succeed and thrive. And our vision is to be recognized as New Jersey's preeminent advocate for abused, runaway, homeless, aging out, and at-risk youth and their families, and a model of trauma-informed best practices in the field. So, as I said, I work out of the shelter, which is 482 Center Street in Trenton. We service youth ages 11 to 17. Once they reach 18, we have a variety of other services within the agency that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But we are a temporary shelter. So most shelters in Mercer County and in general are temporary. Our time frame is anywhere from usually 14 to 21 days. It can go a little bit higher depending on the conditions that the youth are staying here under. So prior to Governor Murphy redoing the fiscal budget, we had a contract with DCP&P where they reserved 5 beds within the shelter. And basically that was a contract that they had with us. When he redid the budget and cut just about $56 million from the Children's System of Care, unfortunately, DCP&P had to revamp some of their decisions and they chose to pull their contract with us. So what that means is they're no longer paying for those beds. So it is a huge deficit to the shelter. And they no longer have a contract with us, which means that any youth that are involved with DCP&P can no longer stay with us. So it's a huge change that we're adjusting to. It's kind of funny that I'm doing this presentation now because we're really trying to come together as an agency and figure out what we can do. We are hoping to take a more clinical direction so we can better suit the needs of our youth and also obviously maintain the shelter and the agency as a whole. So if youth have involvement with DCP&P, unfortunately they cannot stay with us, but that doesn't mean that they can't take advantage of some of the other services that we have to offer for youth their age. Also, if they have CMO involvement, they cannot stay with us either. CMO does not have a contract with us, although we've tried to do that several times with them. I don't know the exact reason or the smaller workings behind that, but obviously due to this big change, we're trying to revisit all of those possible connections. We do, however, have beds that we can use at our discretion, so based on the admin's decision here, and we do have some beds that are reserved by the feds and through FCIU. So if there's any kind of court involvement due to truancy or other runaway behavior, there are 1 or 2 beds reserved through them where the youth can come here. While the youth do stay here, we provide group and individual sessions to address the causes for homelessness or the runaway behavior. We offer case management, so setting up additional services that the youth may not have in place but need to have in place while they stay here or afterwards, and aftercare as well. So we check in usually with the youth on a 1, 3, and 6 month basis once they leave here. Just because, as I had mentioned in a previous presentation I did with Denise, just because they're not here anymore or just because our services are concluded doesn't mean that our services stop altogether. We always want to check in and make sure what we did for the youth is holding true and that nothing's changed where they may need us again. And I'll talk about the outlying groups a little bit more later, but we do offer groups and individual sessions for youth that are not staying here or not engaged in any of our other programs. So we really do try to reach everyone, not just the people that are staying here. And our next program or service that we offer is called the Anchor Link Drop-In Center. This is located at 899 South Broad Street in Trenton. It is exactly what it sounds like. It's a drop-in center for youth ages 14 to 24. They do not need a referral. They can come in whenever, as long as it's between the hours of 10 and 6. Sometimes the staff are there a little bit earlier, sometimes they're there a little bit later, but generally speaking, it should be occupied or staffed by someone between those hours. And we do have bathing facilities there. We do have internet access, so I think I want to say at least 1 or 2 computers, possibly laptops, and then they have access to food and clothing as well. Anchorage is our transitional living program. So this is for youth ages 18 to 21. It's actually the building right next to the shelter, if you're looking at the shelter to the left. Some requirements expected of the youth while they're staying at Anchorage include having a job and enrolled in some kind of post-secondary education. So we're not necessarily pushing them to go to college, but maybe engage in some kind of degree or certificate program at the very least, just to further their career goals. Both of the education and job requirements are required within a certain time frame, as determined by the treatment team at the time of intake. So depending on the youth's specific needs and what situation they're coming from, they may say, okay, you have a month, you have 2 months, you have 3 months to kind of figure out these elements. But while they're staying at Anchorage, they do not have to pay rent. They are engaged in a planned budgeting system. So once they do obtain a job, the staff there come up with part of their treatment plan is how much they should be setting away, how they can pay certain bills that they have, whether it's a cell phone or medical bills, so forth and so on. In order to stay at Anchorage, there is no specific referral type. Anybody can call them and go through the interview process. It is a 3-step interview process, and it's so lengthy and detailed simply because it is a long-term program. The youth can start there on the first day of their 18th birthday and not have to leave until the day before they turn 21 or the day that they turn 21. So essentially, they're in it for the long haul, and they want to make sure that the youth coming into the program are doing everything they're supposed to do, or at least willing to. So CEASE, if you're not familiar, is operated by the City of Trenton Department of Health and Human Services, and their main location is on Perry Street in Trenton. But they do partner with other community agencies such as ourselves to kind of expand their net and try to help as many people as possible. So we do have representatives from CEASE that are working for Anchor House out of one of our locations. The services are for youth ages 18 to 24. It is an open referral type, so anybody can give them a call, whether it's at their Perry Street location, at our location, and they would go through basically a series of questions and a housing needs assessment with one of our staff. And the needs assessment is basically determining their level of homelessness, for lack of a better term. So basically what they're saying is, do they have a job but they can't get approved for an apartment? Do they have an apartment but they can't necessarily afford to pay their rent or utilities with the current job they have? So the assessment kind of determines exactly what assistance they need and how we can be of assistance to them. And if for some reason within one of the programs within our agency, if we cannot help them, either they're not appropriate, we don't have enough room, then CEASE will refer them to other community agencies such as Catholic Charities or Homefront. Rapid rehousing is actually the main source of referrals is through CEASE. So if someone calls CEASE and they go through the housing assessment and we determine that we are in a position to help the youth, they would come to the rapid rehousing program. Again, ages 18 to 24, and it's a 1-year term. So basically we set them up in an apartment, and we help the youth by paying approximately, and I shouldn't say us paying, but by covering approximately 70% of their rent, so they only are responsible for 30. It'll give them a chance to establish themselves, to save money. We do help with job readiness, case management, counseling services, even transportation. And we do have a capacity of 13. Obviously, when referring a youth, we're not going to say, well, they may not have room or they've reached capacity, but it's definitely a limit that we have to operate within ourselves. And 13 is actually a pretty large number. I don't believe, as long as I've been here, which is at least a year and a half, I don't think we've reached capacity. We've gotten close. And it's not because the need isn't there, but it's just a matter of exactly what the youth needs and how we can help. So it's a fairly large number considering that's only one program within our agency. Anchor Line is also pretty similar. It's for ages 18 to 21. They do not need a particular referral type. They do not have to pay rent. Now I say with conditions because I do think they are required to pay some kind of fee. Either we make them responsible for their utilities, or they have to kind of have some regular payments towards something to kind of assist with a budgeting plan, even if it's just a phone bill or something like that. And the capacity for these is only 4. It's because we actually manage these exact apartments, whereas something through rapid rehousing, the program that I just mentioned, the apartments or dwellings are kind of arranged through the city, so like Section 8 almost, whereas these apartments are actually right above one of our offices, and we manage them. We do some of the repairs, stuff like that, so we have a lot less available. Connect to Home, also very similar, along the same lines as the other 2 programs, ages 18 to 21. However, these are through DCP&P referrals only. So not a lot of people realize that youth can be engaged with DCP&P up until the age of 21. A lot of times once they turn 18, they choose to disengage services, either because of stigma, because they feel like they don't need them, because they're an adult now. It's a variety of reasons, but the youth that do choose to stay with them until 21 are very lucky, because there is still a variety of services that they can offer, and at the very least, a variety of connections that DCP&P can make for them in terms of their future. Kind of like I mentioned before, it would be Section 8 housing, and the goal is to obviously keep them on this program as long as possible, or at least as long as they're eligible. There's no term attached to it aside from the 1-year case management. So we just stay involved with the youth receiving housing through this program for 1 year. If they obviously need something afterwards, we're not going to cut them off at the 365-day mark. We're going to work with them. It just won't be as involved as it was in the beginning. And the capacity, because it is through Section 8 and DCP&P referrals, is maxed out at 20. For this one, I do believe we have reached capacity several times, but again, that's not something you as referral sources would necessarily need to worry about. It's just something to keep in mind when speaking to the youth. We obviously want to manage their expectations as much as possible. And I know a lot of the youth that you're coming across aren't necessarily going to fall within these age brackets, but it's important to understand what we can do for the community, in the sense that we do have services for youth that age, and also they may have an older sister or brother, mom or dad may know somebody that's struggling, and these instances trickle down throughout the family. So we don't want an 11 or 12-year-old worrying about what their older sister or brother might be doing, or even just, I know a lot of teachers and school administrators, I've kept in contact with some from like elementary school. So if I'm an adult or a young adult coming to you and just catching up because I saw you at the grocery store or what have you, and I'm letting you know that I'm struggling, as long as you're aware that people like Anchor House or agencies like Anchor House exist, you'll be a help to at least one person. Our life skills program is not residential based. It is based off of DCP&P referrals though. So again, ages 14 to 21, it could be a youth that isn't taken from their home, that's still with mom, dad, whomever, but just needs a little bit more assistance, and the worker can refer them to us. Again, it could be up till age 21, so they may be rather established in whatever situation they're in, but just need that little bit of push. It is youth throughout Mercer County, not beyond. And the last bubble I have on here that says program lacking curriculum. So if the youth being referred to the life skills program through DCP&P is already engaged in a program that offers life skills as part of their curriculum, part of their treatment plan, what have you, they cannot sign up, because then we're basically encouraging that program to continue to not do what they're supposed to be doing. We can advocate for them in the sense that we can talk to whoever their case manager is or their worker is and try to get them those services in place, because they're supposed to have them anyway. But if for some reason that program doesn't offer any kind of life skills training, that's an instance in which they can be referred to us. And out client groups. This is something I mentioned earlier when I was describing the shelter. This is something that we've always done, but we're kind of pushing for more now, especially because our model here, our dynamic looks a little different. The first one is empowering young men. So all of these are trainings that we have to go through through DCF, and they're usually 1 or 2 day trainings where we come out of it certified with a curriculum to host these groups. The first one, Empowering Young Men, is a 4-session program for boys ages 14 to 18 to challenge the youth to examine constructs of masculinity, gender roles, media, and social norms. It also encourages the youth to examine violence and oppression of women at large, and specific vulnerabilities associated with sexual exploitation to assist in building empathy and accountability. That was a mouthful. But most of these groups, the underlying cause or the driving factor for them is human trafficking. It's something that we see a lot here as a shelter for youth, and it's something that we're seeing a rise of on a state and countrywide level. So DCF does put a lot of their focus on trainings on human trafficking. So it's something that's addressed, but we also know that there are factors and things that happen in the youth's life that makes them more vulnerable to human trafficking. So that's why we talk about violence and oppression, gender roles, social media, all of that. So they're not going to feel like they're in it just because they think they're at risk for human trafficking or being a trafficker. It's definitely not meant to be that, but they are all proven to help in that aspect. I am the one who's trained in this program. It is a clinical toolkit for healthy identities, and it's to educate at-risk youth about commercial sexual exploitation through an interactive 10-session curriculum. Now, this isn't a group, this is one-on-one. And it infuses life experiences to reach youth and are designed to create an environment where youth can safely explore societal expectations, media, oppression, self-esteem, and healthy decision-making. So I would be the one facilitating this group. Referral sources basically look like my referral for school outreach that I've sent to Denise before, and I can send it out to everyone, or Denise can send it out once this is over. Basically, it could look like an email, it could look like filling out the form, or just a simple phone call and say, hey, I heard about this group, or I have a youth, how can you help them? How can they fit into one of these? The crew group is actually fairly new. It started by one of our case managers. It stands for a collective of, it's literally like 2 weeks old, so forgive me. It's a collective of respected and empowered women. And it's ages 11 to 17, the same age group as the shelter. And it's not a specific curriculum through DCF, but this one is basically just a girls group. So they can get together, talk about healthy decision-making, healthy relationships. We just had a youth that was referred on Friday. She just unofficially came out to her parents, and she's engaged in a relationship with a girl who's a few years older than her. She's away at college. The girl that was referred to the group is still in high school, and the parents feel they don't care who she likes. It's just a fact of the partner is not influencing her properly. She's making a lot of bad decisions and a lot of relationship-driven decisions. So that's something that she wants her to have help with, and we just so happen to have several youth in the group that are experiencing similar issues. So they'll be a nice group together to kind of sit down and talk out those issues. And the last one is My Life, My Choice. This is a 10-session psychoeducational prevention program for girls ages 12 to 18 that are at disproportionate risk of commercial sexual exploitation. It's evidence-informed and proven effective in reducing the risk of sexual exploitation. It was the first comprehensive survivor-led prevention curriculum in the country. It's nationally acclaimed and aims to change the girl's attitude and perceptions of the commercial sex industry, as well as build self-esteem and personal empowerment. So again, built off of the concept of human trafficking and trying to prevent such instances, but at the same time, a lot of the groups, the worksheets, the activities that are a part of this curriculum go much further beyond that. And I do think that they're very, very helpful and very informative. And like I said, it doesn't take a whole lot to refer the youth. If you want more information on any of these programs, I could also forward the flyers as well, because I'm not an expert in all of them, so I won't claim to be explaining them the best, but they are definitely helpful tools. And school outreach, this is my wheelhouse. So I am the only school outreach counselor here. It's a one-man show. I help youth ages 11 to 18 plus because I was at Rubino last year and I was doing a girls group there, and one of the youth that's still attending there was 19. I'm able to help her. As far as maybe bringing her to the shelter to do groups might look a little different. One, now because of COVID, and two, because we do have minors here, so it gets a little tricky with that, but that's my job to figure that out. No one else needs to worry. But the youngest I can help is age 11. It's an open referral type. Anyone can refer youth to my program. Again, I do have that referral form, but even if it's informal and it's just a phone call or an email, I know what information I need to get started, and that's all that matters. I do individual, group, and family sessions. So again, with COVID, things look a little different. I would normally go out to the schools and host the groups there. Sometimes, if that's not possible, I would bring the youth here. We have several different, meeting spaces within the shelter where we can conduct those groups. Now I am doing them via Zoom. And I can also do workshops, assemblies, presentations, such as this. So even if, you had an entire class, so let's say all of third grade or all of seventh grade, because we'll talk middle school level, at whatever school, we're seeing a large influx of, sexual promiscuity, which sounds crazy talking about seventh graders, but it happens. I've had schools want me to talk to the entire class as a whole, the entire school as a whole, on certain topics as well. So it doesn't just need to be on an individual or small group basis. Variety of topics that I've dealt with or that I am trained to handle are truancy reconciliation, obviously runaway and homeless prevention, human trafficking awareness, self-esteem building, college and career readiness, managing anger and emotions, the list goes on and on. I personally have my master's in school counseling. So I'm basically a school counselor. I'm just working for a third-party agency. So I get to help everybody, not just the school that I'm placed in. And that's about that. So let me just